In 2008, under the lights of a vast crowd in Chicago, a single moment seemed to crystallize the trajectory of a superpower. A man with a name unfamiliar to much of the country stepped forward, and the United States elected its first black president, Barack Obama. For some, it was the fulfillment of a centuries-long promise. For others, it was a rupture in tradition. But this moment was not born in Chicago. It did not begin with a campaign. It did not begin with a speech. It began in empire, and it raises a larger question. How does a child shaped by the collapse of empire rise to lead the most powerful nation on earth? And what does that say about the future of that power? To understand this, we must step back decades to colonial Africa. In 1936, near the shores of Lake Victoria in what was then British East Africa, a boy was born, Barack Obama Sr. Kenya was not yet a sovereign nation, it was a colony. Land was controlled by British authorities, political power was restricted, native Africans had limited access to opportunity. Empire is not simply rule, it is hierarchy, it is structure. It defines who rises and who does not. But even in rigid systems, there are narrow ladders upward. In colonial Kenya, that ladder was education. For ambitious young Africans, schooling became strategy. Master the language of the empire, master its systems, move beyond its constraints. Obama Sr. climbed that ladder with intensity. He was intelligent, confident, restless, determined not merely to survive empire, but to transcend it. Then global forces intervened. The Cold War was not only fought with weapons, it was fought with scholarships. The United States and the Soviet Union competed for influence in newly emerging nations. Education became geopolitical investment. Washington offered opportunities to promising African students. It was generosity, but also strategy. Obama Sr. earned one of those scholarships. In 1959, he left Kenya for America, not as a refugee, not as a laborer, but as intellectual capital shaped by empire, propelled by superpower rivalry. One life, but already tied to global conflict. While colonial Africa produced one thread of this story, another unfolded in the American Midwest. In 1942, in Wichita, Kansas, Stanley Ann Dunham was born into a working-class American family. Her grandparents endured the Great Depression. Her parents lived through the Second World War. This was a different system of power, not empire but mobility. Post-war America believed in reinvention, move west, start over, build something new. The Dunham family moved frequently: Kansas, California, Texas, Washington. There was no inherited aristocracy, only aspiration. If Obama Sr.'s world was defined by colonial hierarchy, Ann Dunham's world was defined by American fluidity. Two different systems, two different philosophies of power, and they would collide in a place that symbolized change. In 1960, both enrolled at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Hawaii had become a state only 1 year earlier. It was multicultural, peripheral, somewhat removed from the rigid racial boundaries of the mainland. At that time, interracial marriage remained controversial, and in several American states, still illegal. But in Hawaii, it was possible. They met as students, they married. In 1961, in Honolulu, Barack Obama was born, a child of Africa and America, of empire and mobility, of Cold War policy and personal ambition. But history rarely moves in harmony. Ambition pulled the family apart. Obama Sr. left Hawaii to pursue graduate studies at Harvard. Eventually, he returned to Kenya. The marriage ended. The father became distant. Absence entered the story, and absence is a powerful force. It creates questions. It creates longing. It creates narrative tension. Meanwhile, Ann Dunham remarried an Indonesian man. Young Barack moved to Jakarta in the late 1960s. Indonesia was emerging from political upheaval. Economic struggles shaped daily life. Here, the future president encountered another system, another culture, another understanding of power. He was American but foreign, connected to Africa yet far removed from it. He lived globalization before it had a name. Eventually, he returned to Hawaii, raised primarily by his grandparents. His identity did not fit neatly into categories. It was layered, and layered identities often become political symbols. Back in Kenya, independence had arrived. The nation was led by Jomo Kenyatta. Empire had fallen, but power struggles remained. Tribal politics, patronage systems, internal rivalries. Obama Sr. entered public service, but clashed with authority. His early promise faded into frustration. In 1982, he died in a car accident, largely estranged from his son. The father who once symbolized opportunity became an idea, a myth, a question, and unanswered questions are powerful. In the 1980s, the son began forging his own path. He studied at Columbia University, then at Harvard Law School. There, he became the first black president of the Harvard Law Review. That was not merely academic success, it was symbolic entry into America's elite institutions. But the defining move was not a degree, it was storytelling. In 1995, he published Dreams from My Father. He did not hide fragmentation, he centered it. The Kenyan father, the Kansas mother, the Indonesian stepfather, the Hawaiian grandparents. His search for identity became metaphor. America, too, was searching for a post-civil rights identity, searching for a place in a globalized world, searching for coherence amid diversity. He transformed biography into narrative power, and modern politics runs on narrative power. By 2008, when he ran for president, his life story was not secondary to his campaign. It was the campaign. He embodied multiple historical forces: the decline of empire, the civil rights movement, Cold War diplomacy, post-colonial transformation, global interconnectedness. To supporters, he represented progress. To critics, disruption. His background was strength and vulnerability, because the question beneath his rise was larger than party politics. Could a global identity lead a national superpower? In January 2009, on the steps of the Capitol, he took the oath of office. The grandson of Midwestern workers, the son of a Kenyan colonial subject, the child who lived in Indonesia, now President of the United States. It felt inevitable, but history is rarely inevitable. The scholarship could have not existed. The marriage could have never happened. Absence could have fractured rather than forged. Instead, each fragment became structure. America has always celebrated origin myths: the pioneer, the immigrant, the self-made leader. But this one was different. It was global from the beginning. It reflected a world no longer confined by borders, yet still defined by them. And so we return to the central question: was his rise proof that American power had evolved? Or was it a rare convergence of historical forces: empire, Cold War strategy, migration, narrative mastery unlikely to repeat? Because origin stories do not simply explain leaders, they define what nations believe is possible. And in modern politics, the greatest power is not merely military or economic. It is the story a nation tells about who can rise and why. And that story is still being written.